I tend to play games that seem to have a linear or otherwise repetitive gameplay that I can enjoy long term. These types of games often create a bubble of inspiration that somehow evolves into a cherished idea of my own, either through potential stories or otherwise through gameplay. The games I tend to play nowadays are Genshin Impact, Miitopia, Legend of Zelda, Cookie Run, and Danny's World. Of course, these aren't frequently visited, or the only games I only enjoy. It's just these ones that hold a special place in my heart. These potential thoughts are always just thoughts, despite how much I really want it to happen. I always tell my friends about these ideas, and they've been really excited by the ideas. So while I try to figure out what the best course of action for making these ideas come to life, or plucking up the courage to actually create them in reality, I figure the first step is to make videos about these ideas. Even if they don't come true, they're still thought about and constantly dreamed of. Cookie Run Kingdom was one of those games where I fell in love with character designs and loved all of the details that was put into each and every cookie, whether it be playable, enemy, or NPC. Limited to a set amount of sprites and lore held within their descriptions, stories, costume, or even abilities, it really gave me the same Steven Universe phase where I would only make over 100 cookie OCs, only to favorite so few of them. The decorations too also opened my eyes to how absolutely adorable each set piece is carefully thought of to a theme. I honestly just want a whole concept art bible of every single concept design of each cookie, map level, or decoration design they have in their vaults. Please! Especially when seeing recent concept sheets like Black Sapphire Cookie and the Beast Cookies, you get to see the thought process of what stayed from the previous design, what they wanted to keep the most but had to eventually remove it, and how the current design outshines the previous. How I came to play Cookie Run Kingdom was because of one silly little guy, Sorbet Shark Cookie. Coming across a silly video with Sorbet Shark Cookie doing this was immaculate. The turning point of my life. It was also around this time when I downloaded Kingdom was October, so my absolute favorite was and always will be Pumpkin Pie Cookie. Since then, I play the game. Playable cookies earning favorites as a title, and the story was so interesting. I then slowed down playing, a skip and a stop from playing the beginning of Beast East to eventually stopping entirely at the summer event with the inclusion of Marshmallow Bunny Cookie. The reason being I can't beat stages on a normal scale and would have to rely on so many types of cookies or newer and overpowered cookies just to overpower the stage itself. Sure, I could spend my time building every cookie, but it feels such like a chore as to how it's done, and it gets frustrating that I can't learn more about the story of the game without having to grind so much. Now, I heard about Tower of Adventures, and I was excited to see what it was. I saw some stuff happen, particularly with the release of Asparagus' gacha being pay to win, and that was about it for what I know about Tower of Adventures. Only recently I rediscovered it, and I discovered that I could play it on my computer, being able to install it. And lo and behold, I was enamored once again. The 3D designs for cookies originally from the game itself, the level designs, and so much more has caught my eye. Shining Berry Cookie also very quickly became my favorite, as I knew of her release and I love her design. She's just Strawberry Cookie, but in her gamer form, and I love her for that. I always loved Strawberry Cookie, and the fact she came into Tower of Adventures under a new identity, but not erased for who she really is, was amazing. It took a couple of tries to get her officially, as I was playing her through the helpers. I do struggle with understanding the game, but at least I want to make the effort of playing through the story. But why am I fawning over Cookie Run? And what does Danny's World have to do with it? Welcome back, I'm Mac. I procrastinate and make art. Today I will be talking about the hypothetical idea of if Cookie Run and Danny's World merge into one, showing off the concept art I made over time and talking about what it would include, spanning from gameplay features to playable characters and their lore. There was a game on Roblox that did this concept already, but with its infamy, it didn't serve its purpose, properly. If you want to learn more about what happened to that, check the description. But if you want the synopsis, Cookie Runner's Kingdom, formerly known as Cookie World Kingdom, was involved in a scandal that included stolen OCs, underpaid or not paid developers, lying about ex-dev team members and using them as a scapegoat, and paying people to keep quiet or to defend the game while also trying to entice kids to pay a mass amount of Robux to play their underdeveloped modeled cookies. Oh my god, they were so bad. It's a tragedy that they came up with the idea first. Genuinely peeved even more after learning of what it was supposed to be before the scandal was known to the public after ex-devs were tired of being treated poorly. Oh my god. But what is Danny's World, and why haven't I mentioned it in the beginning in the same enamored way? Danny's World is also a Roblox game that has genuinely snuck up on me while I was doing pretty much nothing for the most part, doom scrolling in bed like most people do. It was probably during November of 2025, coming across the game during its massive spike of popularity through memes on YouTube Shorts. After seeing enough of it, I decided to throw my hat into the ring and see what it had. The moment I stepped foot into the game, it hooked me just as bad as Cookie Run did. It's basically a survival quote-unquote horror game that allows up to 8 people to come together and survive through multiple floors, avoiding enemies of all types and sizes, and collecting what you can to keep going until the entire run dies. Sometimes it can be friends, or other times you can play with random people in public, but it is optional to play alone. While there's a tutorial behind a lot of words, it's pretty straightforward once you get into it. It just takes a lot of patience and time to get high up, as the RNG tends to be either so merciful for you, or just straight up evil, and cause the entire floor to be wiped out just by stepping foot on floor 5. My favorite. There is a similar ranking system with the characters and enemies like Cookie Run, with common, uncommon, rare, main, and lethal. However, these rates are vastly different. The characters are all super silly, and they have their own ways of dealing with enemies, each one needing skills to take on and understand as you play. You could be someone who enjoys one character for their design, but hate their stats. So you can use items called trinkets to somewhat change that, and instead be more comfortable playing. Sometimes you can't find that middle ground, but it's what counts. Unlike me, I like playing any and all characters, and using any and all trinkets. I hold my own randomized trinket and tune challenge in a public run, seeing if I can make it to and past floor 20 with a public team who I don't know. It's a great way to unwind and set focus on objectives, even finding the courage to keep playing when I need to. I'm also the type to collect everything in the game, ranging from really available skins, tunes, and also getting new Game Pass skins. Even event tunes, trinkets, and skins return each year, so far being Christmas, Easter, and Halloween by the time I post this. I finished collecting everything by Easter of 2026, and as much as I don't want to play Roblox because of their changes, I play only for Danny's World when an event is upcoming, or if friends want to play. However, Danny's World's concept was interesting. It felt like a base for what could be more, and could be flexible. This allowed the creation of games similar to Danny's World, such as Dolly's Factory, Tropical Land, Twilight Zone, and many other games including Cookie Runner's Kingdom. Even though Cookie Runner's Kingdom did such a terrible job at even remotely capturing the essence Cookie Run Kingdom had. But why do I want to take the concept Cookie Runner's Kingdom did? Wouldn't I be angering some people or further dampen this already troublesome game? And does this idea even seem to mash together? Well, I personally think the concept does have its potential, if it's played right. Balancing two different game genres might be difficult, especially when one feels more or less missing features that many desire, while the other has many references and key points to bounce off of. I want to take the challenge that Cookie Runner's Kingdom failed to do, which is create a game based off Cookie Run and Dandy's World. There might be someone already doing this concept in the shadows, but I'm not here to gatekeep. I just think after what happened with Cookie Runner's Kingdom, it should be given new life, a reason to even be made. I actually just want this idea to not be in their hands anymore. They really don't deserve it. So I'll be going over the new concept I had in mind, separating it into how many parts this has. I will first talk about the game's lore, gameplay features, and potential ideas for what would be included. I will also have to introduce some characters in relation to some of the mechanics that are going to be mentioned. I'd rather have said characters be mentioned in another video, as I believe mechanics alone are going to take up so much time in this video. Trust me, there's so much I have in my mind. So buckle up and get your tea, Monster Energy drinks, drawing tablets, sketchbooks, whatever you do for a hobby or full-time, and get ready to hear me eat my microphone. Also to mention that as much as I reference both games, none of the lore, characters, and such are related to neither Cookie Run or Danny's World in an AU of canon sense. This game is to be a standalone. Any characters that share the name or design features of canon cookies or tunes are of pure coincidence or as reference. So let's get started with the brief lore of what I call this project as Cookie Coven. But first, Cookie. Cookie Coven takes place in the walls of a head coven witch. There are 5 witches within this coven she created. The Witch of Savory Presence, as herself, the Witch of Sweet Embrace, the Witch of Sour Taste, the Witch of Salty Scent, and the Witch of Bitter Volume. Each one of these witches lived peacefully with their living creations of cookies and delights, finding each one of them useful in their abilities. They also loved their creations with the utmost adoration, proud of what their purpose is and how they were created. Whether it be gardening, exploring the world around them, and coming back to tell their stories, or helping the witches personally, any and all creations are welcomed to live in each of these witches' homes. However, one fateful day, the witches began to crave these sentient cookies, devouring them whole out of sadistic enjoyment. Any and all cookies found will perish. However, only 5 cookies were allowed to stay alive and live beside the witches. These 5 are the personal familiars of the witches. But only one seems to be much newer to the coven, unable to fully understand her witch's life before tragedy struck. Faced with once friendly, now looming threats, and cookies in need of saving, her mission is to now save cookies from being devoured by the witches and find out what happened to cause these twisted pleasures. You, the player, will be playing as various cookies and venture outside of these slowly deteriorating walls to find out what started the tragedy with the help of the Coven Witches' familiars. As mentioned in the lore section, these witches have titles. These titles are important to separate not only who each witch is, but their specialties in their cooking or baking. They each bring a delight to the coven parties and even sometimes collaborate together to make some surprisingly interesting mixtures one half may struggle with. It's a type of specialty each one takes upon in a way that they work with similar ingredients to their own duties, or generally what they enjoy consuming the most. But alongside this information, these titles are to help place cookies and enemies in a specific category, helping distinguish which witch created each cookie and how to figure out their concept and ability, design, and how the enemy flips that concept against the player. We'll go over how the senses of taste would work compared to how the sense of the body would work. To make sure this makes sense, I will give examples to how each of these could be interesting on their own. Plus, the cookie who will be under a certain witch's category may only have one part of the title, especially if that cookie would be related to a holiday. Savory Presence is the head coven leader's specialty. The specialty in savory being meaty dishes or vegetable dishes. However, since commons will be related to these titles, and you would have the ability to play 1 of 10, depending on the title, the 2 commons you would see for Savory Presence don't exactly follow the principles of being neither a meat or a vegetable. Instead, these 2 will be items a tea party host would propose. With the savory part, I could come up with multiple types of cookies for this category. As for presence, it's in relation to sight. Sight is an important thing. Being able to see where danger lurks, or overall, a way to see where things are. Some cookies would have a larger sight ability, or specific passive abilities to see where items specific to them are. Sometimes it can be to show players or enemies around the map. But that's a pretty basic way of putting presents, isn't it? I'd also like to offer things like invisibility, so enemies don't see you, like Hani's active ability, or setting down a prop to make enemies be distracted, like Blott's active ability. These are the types of things that make you think more about how to use their abilities. But these are also things that would make people want to avoid their enemy versions. Sure, an invisible enemy counterpart would be easy to see or easily missed if you're not paying attention. Coming back to the Connie ability, Twisted Connie stays invisible all of the time, possessing machines and making them look like they're unfinished. You can spot when she's in a machine by the valve being a Y shape and the light flashing blue. Twisted Blott doesn't exactly do what his playable encounter does though. Instead, he uses his mimicry to make 2 large hands spawn around the map, but only just 2. They do move around the map, but it isn't much of a threat until he spawns one of his hands underneath you, or if you're in a blackout and you can't see jack. Maybe I could do something like fake enemies around the map that's been spawned in by the enemy, or maybe the enemy hiding in an item to make someone pick it up, or they jump out at you in case you got too close. There's a lot of interesting ideas for presents, such as the case of the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who. These entities evolve to only move when a living being isn't looking at them, and they tend to be pretty powerful in groups by disturbing an enclosed area with lights in it, making the light flicker on or off before your demise. Sometimes the enemy may not be able to see you. Things like limited vision or blindness can make them wander aimlessly. I like to think that there's a radius to how far they can see, either being limited by the light they carry or otherwise their eyes covered or broken off. The Witch of Sweet Embraces Sweetness is a specialty of rare or unique desserts. It can be stuff that can be made with sugar or honey. Some desserts can involve sweet fruits without the extra sugar or honey to make the mixture, but it's a pretty easy concept to take for cookies. I think this will be one of those titles where I'd be way more interested by design, especially since I can make some funky stuff like cake pops or cinnamon rolls or fudge brownies. Besides the sweet part, embrace is something I like in design as well. It's an interesting combination of the whole title, really. Embrace is similar to a hug. It can also mean feeling warm and safe in someone's arms or company. That and also a hearty, warm meal that can be fulfilling. Sometimes the food can help with sickness or even when you're feeling down. I think the best examples is Scraps and Goob. Goob brings people in for a hug, and Scraps can grapple onto machines or people to bring herself to them. I like the idea of characters bringing things in or bringing themselves to others, though there would be a way to make sure this doesn't become a problem, possibly an invincibility while being pulled around. Although, you could also have a healer come near someone to hug another to heal. Aside from that, you can also deliver healing to others, like giving someone a nice bowl of soup. But what about the opposite? Well, instead of warmth or sweetness from someone, it can be cold, fake, or otherwise soul-sucking. There will be those who could give you a fake hug or an item to cause you to lose a heart. Sometimes it can be something that pulls you away to hit you or otherwise drop you. Plus, Twisted Glisten makes this also really fun as an idea, where you would need to stay near him for company to keep his meter down. Maybe there could also be an enemy who needs you to stay clear from it, so you don't make them lose their sanity and go for everyone. The Witch of Sour Tastes, or maybe sour flavors, whichever one sounds better. Specialty are drinks and watery items. It is their occupation for making medicines, poisons, or otherwise stuff like gelatin or energy drinks. It's actually pretty neat to think about fast healers, since most of the time you'll need a quick recharge or a quick dose of medicine to make sure you make it through the day when you can't take a sick day off. But with this, most of the ingredients would be sour, stuff like lemons or limes, just to make it not taste too disgusting or makes you perk up for energy. There also can be drinks similar to tea or energy drinks like Monster. Just an idea. She loves to surround herself in energy drinks, that's for sure. This title is pretty straightforward for its meaning, but that doesn't mean I can't make something fun with it. I propose an idea of a playable cookie drinking their own mixtures to boost their stats. It is random, of course, but the duration can last longer if it's handcrafted. As an enemy type, there could be puddles of these mixtures strewn about from this enemy, and it's a 50-50 on if these mixtures will be helpful, boost you for a short amount of time, or debuff you in that stat. There's no difference in color to these mixtures to tell if it's good or not, so it's best to test it first before doing anything reckless. There could be drinks sat down by a cookie too that others could pick up, which would be really neat for those who can't stop what they're doing and grab it. Similar to Coco, who drops her bonbons and boosts both speed and extraction for 10 seconds. Also, on the note of water-related enemies, I figured to make half of the cookies only spawn when there's water present on the map, for them to walk on, like a pond or lake, and half of them could walk on and off water. It adds a layer of fun to those who prefer if enemies were to spawn in specific locations, especially if you're already bombarded by other difficult enemies. The Witch's Salty Scent was one of those things where, for a while, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with it, but after a bit of thinking and going over it, I had a realization both before making this video and during the rewrite of the script. Salt can mean spices in general, not just salt. And not just that, spices can smell. The salty part of the title can be literally anything, but I think salt and pepper can be the basic form of seasoning. Other stuff like paprika, cumin, and many others can be added too. Besides that, scent is about smell. It's actually really easy to understand what to do with this, but also consider herbs. Herbs can also smell too, depending on what you do with it. This can be with perfumes, incense sticks, or candles. With these scents, you could also be affected by debuffs or buffs and stats, depending on which cookies boost which stats. Additionally, I also came to the realization it can be meaningful of spiritually too, as salt and sage can ward off evil spirits. So that's something fun to try. Maybe I can have the enemies be warded off or trapped in an area for a small amount of time. It's good to have some enemies be stopped. I like the idea of the smoke bomb in Danny's World, but it doesn't do much, and it's a rare item you can either pick up or buy from the shop, so it doesn't really help in the long run. I could also do a fog event too with this in mind, similar to Spring Fever, but make it not have the energized buff. Instead of whatever Daze is doing, make it to where enemies have lower vision in the fog. Players will also have this effect too, but not as much as the enemies themselves. Maybe some presents cookies may be able to get through this kind of event. The Witch of Bitter Volume has a whole orchard full of fruits and berries. These fruits and berries can be sweet or bitter, as science has curated them to be more sweeter or otherwise more abundant for consumption. What's great about that is that the Sweet Embrace Witch does often visit Bitter Volume, so a little lore for two of the familiars. There's a few fruits I like that would be in the hypothetical game, stuff like mangoes or cranberries. Volume, on the other hand, there's different ways I can go about it. It could be loud, harmonic, soft, quiet, or more. It's also got a range similar to presence, being that you can make the cookie louder to attract enemies or distract them in a single spot by playing a song. I liked the idea of Box's characterization in Danny's World. He's a music box that would play music, but eventually he stopped in recent time. There's an art piece of which depicting him playing music, but I wish this was more explored, especially more explored in skins. Aside from that, you can also make the enemies silent on purpose, or otherwise be really loud to hear coming. Some of the enemies in Danny's World does this mechanic, but other times the enemies are just silent. What I think I could do is also make the enemies trick you into thinking they're coming or leaving. Example being that the closer they are to your location, their sound cues sound farther away. The farther away they are to your location, their sound cue sounds closer. One of those tricks where you really have to pay attention. Sometimes there could be a music item to pick up, or otherwise an item an enemy could use to lure you in. With the Witch's titles covered now, theorizing how these abilities could be used, and how the enemies could flip it around, I think I covered most of what I jotted down. This list took the longest to trim down to make sure I didn't have to do multiple parts. But there is still more to be said. Now I want to talk about how I would create the lobby portion, how friends could come together, and how I would implement the idea of how people can get rewards, skins, lore, and mainly how you would play the game. I'll split this portion up into 2 segments. The first half being about the main lobby, and the second half about being how the actual game will work, with some choices to add a better variety of objectives to be occupied by. Hopefully these 2 don't take too long, as I'll be going over them as simply as possible. Lobby design is important when you're playing a game. Wanting to chill with other players, game planning, chat, meeting new friends, or simply exploring what you earned through playing the game. It's a get-together, yet explorative area with no danger that you're dropped in. But let's talk about what you would start with, what NPCs you would talk to, and what UI would be available to you. Starting off, you will be greeted by the option to play a tutorial before you start, and an option to play without a tutorial. You'll be able to review the tutorial and earn a small reward for completing it, just in case you wanted something to start with, or to only understand how the game would work. The one who will greet you will be Savory Presence's familiar, who, for the purpose of introducing her as a mascot, in that her design is more or less solid, I introduce Elderberry Cookie. Elderberry Cookie will be your host, your guide through the tutorial, and allow you to select who you are by giving you 10 different options of starters, all of which can be bought later. Of course, there will be an information thing on the side with their stats and abilities featured, to show if you would enjoy that type of playstyle at first, or would prefer to choose someone else. I figure that allowing 10 different styles of 5 different titles would allow more people to find their footing and also work together better, rather than being forced to play 2 different cookies with way less of a foothold in how to play the way you want. That's one of my gripes with Danny's World, personally. The game doesn't provide a visual tutorial or characters to teach you the difference in stats more accurately. You're instead given an essay paper on how to play, 2 characters where the passives only relate to speed or doing machines. My siblings have trouble reading. Sometimes they rely on audible dialogue for a game. They're the portion of the player base that would struggle playing. I myself only skimmed the tutorial, as I didn't want to go through all of the reading, as it wasn't active to my brain, and I would immediately go into a run or a solo, where I admittedly was a bit confused, before I got an idea of what to do very quickly. Sometimes people don't have the time to read at all, and wants to try the game, only to end up being lost, confused, and then quitting when they don't understand enough of how the core gameplay works. But back to Cookie Coven. After selecting the cookie you want to play and or finish the tutorial, you will be asked to go to her little nook, basically her store. I should mention that this lobby will be based off of Cookie Run's Witch's Castle layout, specifically this. So keep that in mind while we tour through the lobby. Elderberry's shop will allow you to go through each of the playable cookies and see who you could buy, and what you would need to do to get any of them. She will also give you tips or dialogue that you can ask questions about herself or others, as well as you can play or replay the tutorial when you want to. Perhaps after the first time you play it, you could have the option to try a more dedicated practice run, where you can try different combinations of enemies in case you run into them. But that's more of a type of game mode that could be developed later on with other game modes that I have in mind. Also, before Elderberry will let you go, she will hand you a book, one carefully crafted to help you, the player, to understand what to do, where to get stuff, and what you already have. This book will allow you to earn more rewards, unlock more lore, or simply customize your characters or stamps. We'll get back to the journal once I talk about the other areas that you can encounter. Next to Elderberry's store, she'll provide a small area catered to which enemy will be more aggressive that day. Basically a way to make that particular enemy spawn more often. It's a neat little area with a few items to be strewn about, similar to the arena's areas design, but buff it up a little more. Being ran by Sour Taste is familiar. This is where you'll likely find extra pets to keep. These pets were found with no owners or lost in the outside world. so they were taken in to be taken care of until someone comes along to adopt them. Any and all pets are welcomed. These pets work as the trinket equivalent to Danny's World. However, I added a third slot so you can have up to 3 pets for the run. Pets aren't the only thing you can look out for though, as that there are actual trinkets that can be given to you by completing certain requirements. These trinkets are to be given by the familiars themselves, and by the dragons. This was one of my other big gripes with Danny's World. When you only have 2 trinket slots, it limits a lot of characters' potential into becoming a more comfortable playstyle for others. This is fine for the more well-developed toons within the game. But for others that require your attention to more than one thing, you'll have to sacrifice a trinket slot for something that doesn't help with the actual main gameplay, being that you have to progress further into the run. And thus, when players start dwindling in the run or straight up leave before the actual fun intense stuff happens, you're stuck with one trinket that only provides so much help to you personally. You can also earn pets by completing other requirements of cookies, much less of a hassle compared to what you need to do with the familiars and dragons. Just like the other NPC shops and NPCs in general, you can talk to them and either discuss their thoughts on the situation at hand, or their overall feelings of others, and also unlock more rewards through permanent objects they give you. Sweet Embrace's familiar will offer you the comfort and style for your cookies, fitting for any and all personalities. They believe that to express one's personality and desires, they must dress to fit the part. This hobby was actually picked up by their witch, as their witch would often dress up her familiar and Bitter Volume's familiar. They hated it before, but eventually tolerated it. It was only after the incident that made Sweet Embrace's familiar take up that hobby too, just to find a normalcy and take a tribute to their witch. They are, after all, loyal and compassionate, not one to run away. But they're also not one to admit their weakness in the face of danger, or otherwise. These skins can be purchased through using coins, but some skins can be received through doing quests given to you, making some of them special just by how the familiar thinks of them. I also thought that if I were to have this game be picked up and become a reality, I'd have a Discord for the games I come up with, especially with community interaction. One of my favorite things to do is look at fan-made Danny's World skins, and so many of them look so absolutely fitting for the character, or otherwise silly, beautiful, or a really cool concept that I would never have come up with myself or would see in the game. So, as much as I'm not much of a costume artist, I would allow a sort of costume design contest for people, allow people to make a skin for personally selected cookies by myself. I would especially pick the more trickier cookies. I would see people suffer, and let the community choose which skins they like the most. I would be absolutely sure this is a fair fight. I won't want to drop like 3 skins for one character and then suddenly blink to find an entire community on fire because the less funny one got picked. That would be a shame! And also to add on, for those who don't win but is within the circle of being in the finals, I would personally draw fan art of their skin with their favorite character that they made it for, because personally, I don't want to see it to go to waste, and it would be so sad that the person didn't get anything from it. Speaking of Bitter Volume's familiar, this one loves to gossip when bribed. They're mostly sleeping in the corner, out of the way, and in the shade. And when you hang around, they're mostly asleep babbling about certain topics that they would never otherwise mention when you directly talk to them. They will provide you with the more lore-based content, stuff like comic pages and quests relating to the familiars themselves or even the witches. They also will share their room with special NPCs that will allow you to earn more cookies, just as long as they stay on their side of the room. This area will serve as a way for people to hang out or create a plan. In Danny's World, there's these sections where people will line up, with the host wanting to create a specific group. Sometimes these areas here will serve as a general chatter spots as well. Also to note on the first part, I have an idea to make sure that people can create specific lobbies with requirements, so hold your breath before mentioning how it would be a little unorganized itself. I wanted to create a general spot large enough to make sure people have space to interact with each other, rather than with the NPCs. Even more, find a comfortable spot to sit and go over what you've earned or read pages given to you without having to be in the way. It's just a courtesy. Hopshop belongs to the final member of the familiars, Salty Scents. This familiar works in a compacted room with a bunch of gadgets and materials. This one was a bit harder to place, but I chalked it up to where you can convert certain items into other useful things, so holiday coins can be turned into regular gameplay coins if you want. You can also pick up items off of the floor in runs to make starter game gear when you load into a match. Plus, you will be given a weekly missions list to complete, as you can earn rewards such as coins, gears, or materials to make a rare starter gear. With these options, you don't have an option to talk to them, as they're often busy with their work and would rather get things done sooner than later. They will also provide you with additional quests like the others, but these ones may be more geared to getting stamps. Stamps are similar to stickers, as you can equip them if you can't type in-game or need a quick way to say something important. Hopshop will get you right down to business for stamps. Some stamps may need a little something extra to earn too, as these stamps may be viewed from a farther distance, similar to a certain golden brick in Danny's world. Now with the shops covered, I like to go over the journal you would receive when talking to Elderberry Cookie. However, some of these tabs will be locked behind talking to the other familiars, as making sure you explore your surroundings without jumping right into the game would make it easier to navigate and learn more about the story or generally what familiars will aid you with. This is where your most important stuff will be tabbed. We'll go over what each one does in brief detail, because I have a feeling this video will be super long enough by the time I finish recording and scripting, without being too wordy or otherwise confusing. This tab will be keeping track of who you have. Each page are labeled with who they were baked by, placed in alphabetical order, and organized by tier. These tiers are as such: commons, rares, epics, specials, dragons, and familiars. Playable cookies can be received through Elderberry Cookie's spot, known as Cookies for Hire, as you are technically getting help for your journey. You can also go into the info tab for one of these cookies and learn more about them, unlocking more details of their characters by doing objectives relating to themselves. There will be a skin unlockable and other rewards in regards to how they think of others, coins, or materials they themselves may hold. Fail batches are the enemy types of the playable cookies. As to complete getting their information, you earn soul stones you can pick up off the floor if they're on the floor. The max amount you can fill the bar is 200%, and there is a reason. Hear me out. In order to get the pet related to the playable cookie, or getting the cookie you want to play as, you will only need to get 50 to 100%. The 200% is for a special game mode I will talk about later, and for familiars and dragons. I want to make sure familiars and dragons are harder to get by not only doing quests by talking to specific NPCs and collecting certain cookies, but also by collecting their soul stones strictly by the boss floors picked by the people in the run. You will have this chapter unlocked immediately when you receive the journal. As I mentioned before, Hopshop will unlock the stamp and daily mission section of your journal, allowing you to use these stickers for anything from communicating, saying a friendly hello, ping to a certain location with an item, or simply goof around. Sticker sheets will be available in letting you see what type of stickers you can collect for that specific set. The rewards for collecting all the stickers within the sticker sheet will be an interesting sticker that will allow you to see it from afar with no walls to block it from vision, similarly to the golden brick sticker. Holidays will have the same treatment too. I figured that after you finish the tutorial, you will be able to complete the first sticker sheet by receiving basic stickers to earn a little more rewards such as coins or basic materials. Nothing too fancy. Of course, the unlockable sticker, similarly to the golden brick, will actually have a related message underneath like objectives here, heals here, I'm wounded, or such. It's annoying how in Danny's World you have to wait on a cooldown to even remotely show others where you are or even where an item or machine is. Even with the updates coming out to have these features be more often, people are still being limited in usage and have to rely on so little to convey what they're saying to their teammates. As for missions, they will refresh daily. Rewards will be either coins or materials, depending on how hard the mission is. These missions don't have anything too advanced in rewards. However, I'm not inclined to making similar quests to Danny's Worlds with character quests for holidays. But rest assured, I will do character quests related to their hobby, job, or otherwise, and not needing to encounter their enemy version at all. Even the familiars and dragons will have the same treatment, so nobody has to struggle with anything. This is your pet chapter. Pets will allow you to pick which ones you want to have on your run, and also allow you to get more rewards. These pets will also give you some extra info of how their owners used to or have been treating them by unlocking those options through having that pet be used in runs. Though, not too much to be annoying. This chapter is related to having lore content, such as comic pages for character interaction or pre-incident, map lore to talk about some additional stuff that some cookies may comment on, or cookies having their own discoveries about some interesting effects post-incident. These ones will include special skins and stamps, having more coins or even soulstones for cookies you have trouble looking for. If you already have the 200% soulstone search complete, they will automatically be converted into coins and diamonds. I really want to make sure each cookie has their spotlight and shining in on their personalities and hobbies, even if they don't often show up in lore. Sometimes they can be unclear to who they are or what they are, so making sure that if the design doesn't show it off, it can be always reflected in the visual hobbies, job, or personality. I believe that's all the journal has to offer. I didn't want to busy it up, so I also made a settings page for where the settings, save and quit, and access other options like codes, announcements, and where to find me. We're almost there, folks. We'll talk about the gameplay portion as the final part of the video. The way you will be able to enter a run with others is simply by heading to the top of the wall. Where there, you can find mouse holes that exit into the outside being covered by tall grass and distant large objects, befitting a witch's size. There will be a pop-up that allows you to go through picking a public, private, or locked lobby set by the host. You can have the option to allow up to 8 people within the lobby, though that could be changed, only continuing into the real game once the host starts. The host can also add a title, description, and a requirement list so people don't accidentally get carried. I believe these requirements would be set on the same level as the host, or lower if the host chooses. So the host cannot ask for a level 50 or up player when the hosts themselves are level 10. I don't have a leveling system in mind, but I figured it's best to add that, so it's easier to create this system. Once you have your team, you'll be able to spawn into the game, appearing in a lobby like this, with your characters standing next to each other in cool poses or something. Once you have all the players load in, you can either customize your cookies with different skins, select different pets or trinkets, or change cookies to play. If you don't need the pre-planning, you and your team must all select the ready button to start the run. If there is a problem with people not readying up, there will be a majority vote, or if over, let's say, 4 out of the 8 people are ready, there will be a countdown to force the game to start. When I made this script, I was supposed to eventually explain the stats in the game, but I actually never did. Whoops. So instead, I'm just gonna say it right now, before we move on to the actual gameplay, because I feel like it fits here. As for the stats in the game, regarding core gameplay, I'd like to quickly go over it before I go into objectives. It will include health. Regular cookies will have 3 lives, while dragons and the familiars will have 2. Attack skill, being how easy the skill check is, depending on the objective. Attack speed, determine how fast you are both running/walking, and attacking an objective. Stamina, being able to regenerate stamina faster. Stealth, being stealth. And power, depending on the objective, being able to pretty much hit the enemy harder and kill it. So yeah, that's the stats. Hopefully it's not too much. Welcome to your first stage. These maps are called stages and will count up like this: 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, and so on. When the stage reaches 1-9, you will be able to move into stage 2-1. These maps are randomized, by the way, but they will be vastly different for stages like 2-0, 3-0, and 4-0, and etc. The first stages you will be commonly appearing in will be the Witch's Gardens. These will be split up into 4 parts, as it is a really large place for a cookie. These parts can be anything from Savory Presences Garden to Bitter Volumes Garden. Between stages, you will be greeted with a roadmap. These roadmaps will allow you to see what stage you're on, what's next, and a brief intermission to load into the next map. But let's talk about the UI that you will be seeing on your screen before we move on to other stuff. The currency you will be using in the stages are diamonds. These can be picked up off of the ground in pouches, earned through completing objectives, and making it into the next stage. Alongside that, you will have your hearts featured, your abilities, inventory, progress bar, stamps, stamina, and a cute little profile card for your cookie. You can also still earn coins through completing an objective. Now that we got that over with, it's time to talk about the breaks in between the maps. After each stage, you will be talking with Elderberry Cookie. She will be your shopkeeper in these runs, as your safety and comfort during the journey is her duty. Places can have the option to choose between 4 different items on her table. This will also serve as a break section, allowing people to take some time to relax and grab something to eat or drink. Once you're ready to get back on the road, you can click on the Continue Journey button. Same rules apply here from the starting lobby section. If there's a majority vote to continue, there will be a countdown before continuing. There's also another mode Elderberry Cookie will go into, which is giving you tarot cards to choose your fate of the run. These cards can range from more power, more stamina, less events in your stage, less speedy items, less speedy enemies, or boss floors. These cards will have a fancy look depending on what type of card it is, and also give a brief description of what it does. The card with the most votes will be picked, but don't worry, the other cards will return later. So let's explain what some cards will do, starting with the event cards I have in mind, and then talk about the boss floors. Event cards will allow certain events to be less frequent. These events that I currently thought of are as follows. The Witching Hour. When a Witching Hour occurs, all enemies on the map will gain a speed boost and an awareness meter. This means enemies will be able to see you farther away and get to you faster if they're not blinded or passive enemies. This is seen by the deep red ambience and the red moon high in the sky. Not like a blackout, but more of a setting of a scary mood. Fog. Fog will obscure yours and the enemy's vision, causing you and the enemies to have shorter attention spans. You can of course see light cookies in the fog, so you're not completely lost on how to see people. This also means enemies will have a much harder time spotting you, even if you have lower stealth. It's only 2 events. I am willing to hear out more events for base gameplay, but that's about some of the events I imagine could happen. As for my favorite cards, the boss floors, I'd like to give it a little more depth. Unlike Dio's floor, these cards allows you to access the kitchen areas of one of the witches whose card is chosen. This will also allow you to pick up the special soul stones in regards to the familiar of that witch. These floors act as a challenge itself to make sure you don't make it out alive. What will be added is as such: 2 commons, 2 rares, 1 epic, and lastly, 1 witch. The witch will be lethal. Once spotted, you are instantly dead. This is your chance to prove you can make it through in one piece. Your objective is to turn off their ovens, get them to stop eating your kind. Once you finish the floor, you and your team, that's still alive, will receive a special gift, being that you will be able to choose which stat you want to add a star to. All of the remaining team members will be able to separately choose their own stats. There's no team vote for one stat. This allows for cookies who some people might not like the stats of to be a little more useful, or at least fun with a different strat, but for a price. With dragon-related boss floors, I have yet to decide what kind of reward you get. You would get all of the special cookies plus the dragon with the floor event. I think if you play the card with the event-related cookies, there would be possibly prompts that could change the gameplay just a smidge. Just a little idea I had. Besides those cards, I will allow at least one special card that will be very hard to get, and that is a revival card. Unlike the 3 heart cards you will be able to use to heal your still living teammates, this card can revive all of your dead teammates, only putting them back on 1 heart, no full heal, so be careful of who you revive. The next thing to talk about are some of the items you could pick up. It's not a lot of items, as looking for specific items to fit into the criteria from Cookie Run is difficult. For common items to be found, you can find basic colored jelly beans. They're the equivalent to Danny's World's candy, pretty much the same way that they're used. I think mixed jelly beans should be an item made by a cookie. For items like stamina, I believe that these stamina jellies from Kingdom will suffice perfectly. These ones are for smaller portions of stamina to regain, while these bigger ones are for full stamina replenish. For power-related stat boosts, I'm thinking these biscuits, is that what they're called? Are to make it happen. They work the same as instructions. Meanwhile, the gold shiny ones are incredibly rare to find and can instantly make you complete an objective. For items that heals, I've decided that energy potions from Oven Break helps. Smaller potions count as 1 heal, while bigger potions act as a full heal. There will also be a special heal potion that will create a temporary invincibility aura around that heart specifically, making it to where you can get hit 1 more time without losing the heart. I can see it being abused. That being, people could use the item to fully restore their hearts with double invincibility, making it instead of 3 hits and dead, it's 5 hits and then you die. Or is it maybe 4 hits and then... No, wait. You know what I mean. There will also be a chance, underneath the invincibility heals, that you can earn a bottle of energy, allowing you to heal 1 heart 3 times at any time you want, similar to the boxed chocolates in Danny's World. I will say it is supposed to be harder to get. These are really rare, something you can't get easily, so please be sure to use them wisely. As for crit skill, and also speed items, I might leave that up to people's suggestions. I've only really played Kingdom and a little bit of Tower of Adventures, so I'm not too up to date with what could be made or added. As I mentioned before, for the coins and diamonds, you can easily find small pouches on the ground. Diamonds, however, will have a chance to be bigger diamond pouches, just to make people who struggle early on getting diamonds to have extra. Of course, there will be pets and starter gear items that will grant you these different things at the start, and give you a smaller, less powerful item in place of what you start with. But this part of the gameplay isn't exact, and I haven't really thought much about it, and getting the proper idea of balancing it out. Again, up to people's suggestions. I'm all ears. Now we move on to the objectives, at least for the ones that I've already thought of. Now for the objectives, they would be spawning in specific spots, or basically specific maps. Depending on the map, the objectives will be different. Sometimes it could be the same all across the board, but other times it'll need the necessary environment for it to spawn. So basically a bunch of different objectives that people can, enjoy. Also, by the time I record this part, I've already played Dolly's Factory, which, by the way, is kind of fun, and it kind of makes me sad. But it also gave me quite a nice insight for what a quote-unquote Dandy's World-like game could be, with different objectives. But I already had these ones thought out before I played Dolly's Factory. So, the first objectives are living plants. There are 3 types of seedlings that you must kill. 1 type for land and 1 type for water. And when you kill the 3, the final objective will spawn in, being the cookivorous plant, or what I would like to call the rose plant. The water one is also called lotus seedlings and lotus flower, just to be a little more fancy with it. These ones will require more people to hit the enemy rather than just one person, and everyone gets an equal amount of currency for fighting them. The second objective is to collect keys for locks. These keys will be carried by cake hounds, mostly only 2 cake hounds. This is the type of objective for people who have high speed or stamina to catch them, basically giving people another way to run around and explore. The third idea is to find parts for an objective, maybe an object to remove the blocked exit. These parts could be found anywhere on the map, so you'll have to use your eyes to really see where they are. Fourth type for an objective could be about collecting enough of one thing, needing to break stuff to even get some of them. That's about all the objectives you could have in the game so far, but I am of course willing to hear out other objectives too. Maybe one with racing, like Oven Break, or just create a game mode about kart racing, but it's Cookie Run. Wouldn't that be insane for a Cookie Coven universe? It's just racing. If you think I'm missing anything besides enemies and playable cookies, feel free to mention it. As I mentioned previously, playable cookies and enemies will be made as a separate video. Everything here was to somewhat establish core gameplay and some extra things. I really want to make this idea work. It looks complicated, but I believe it will work. It would be preferably outside of any social games like Roblox for sure. Of course, I would also want a different game to come out first before Cookie Coven is even remotely ready, as this other game has a less complicated concept. But anyways, what do you think of this concept? Was there anything I missed or should be as an addition to gameplay? Any of these questions or concerns would be answered in a part 2 regarding important cookies and enemies, whenever that comes out. I'll see you later. Bye bye!